I will start with a timeless and non-political question. At least it would have been non-political during my 21-year Army career. Is releasing your military's attack plans before an attack a good idea? The resounding answer, regardless of political party, should be no. Combat is dangerous enough without the enemy knowing your plan or even parts of your plan. Well, just a few months ago, the highest ranking official in the Department of Defense, Secretary Hegseth, committed this unforgivable mistake through his unforgivable incompetence. I'm Vince Kaster. I'm a retired Army Special Forces officer. I'll explain Hegseth's unforgivable incompetence. I'll explain why it is so dangerous, serious, and relevant. And I'll explain how Hegseth's unforgivable incompetence reveals Trump and his followers in Congress are protecting and promoting Trump's brand at the expense of national security. I was in the Army from 2000 to 2021. For the first few years of my career, I was an infantry officer, but I spent most of my career in special forces. I served 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. I'm a patriot. I went to war for this country, but I know that is not the only defining criteria for patriotism. I believe everyone here with an open mind is a patriot. Trump and his followers, however, think they've cornered the market on patriotism, and that's blinded them to the danger Trump and his administration pose to America's national security. Hegseth's unforgivable incompetence of sharing the details of a military attack is most commonly called Signalgate. It happened in mid-March. Signalgate is a concrete example of Trump and his administration protecting Trump's brand at the expense of national security and the warriors they claim to respect so much. I'll spend some of my time on Signalgate because it's serious, it's relevant, it falls in a realm I worked in, and it's solvable. I will then spend some time tying Signalgate to more recent events to show how Trump is promoting his brand at the expense of national security. Finally, I'll show where this could lead by providing insights into things the administration has done and said, and by showing a real-world example of a military and intelligence service that Trump is downgrading us to. Signalgate revolves around protecting secrets. Therefore, it's important for you to know the U.S. definition of secret. Just give me 1 second. I'll pull it up. Secret refers to that national security information or material which requires a substantial degree of protection. The test for assigning secret classification shall be whether its unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause serious damage to the national security. Examples of serious damage include revelation of significant military plans or intelligence operations. The classification secret shall be sparingly used. It's important to know secret information requires special handling and can only be sent via special approved communication systems. Also, since Signalgate revolves around protecting secrets, it's important for you to know the possible consequences for U.S. officials who fail to protect secrets. Several laws prescribe jail time or fines, but the go-to punishments are firing someone or revoking the person's security clearance. Getting fired, of course, should be an obvious career ender, but getting your security clearance revoked is also a career ender. It's an administrative action, but it ends the person's career because the person can no longer handle secret information or use secret systems, which is essential for most military and intelligence officials. At many points in my career, I handled and protected secrets. As a Special Forces detachment commander in Iraq, my team and our Iraqi partners hunted bad guys. We often flew in on helicopters with gunships and fighters supporting us in the air. To protect those of us on the ground and in the air, all communications with the air crews was via secret communication systems. For coordinations prior to the operation, we used emails, chats, and phones approved for secret communications. During the operation, we used radios approved for secret communications. Much to my disappointment, my career was not all hunting bad guys. At another point in my career, I was a staff officer in Germany. There, spies were the threat. Spies would have been mildly interested in what I was working on, but they really wanted to use me or my electronic devices to access senior leaders or the military's databases. Therefore, I had to follow security measures to protect secrets. I tell you that so hopefully you believe me when I say I know why America protects secrets and I know how to protect America's secrets. Getting back to the question I started with, is releasing your military's attack plans before an attack a good idea? I hope you agree with me when I say no. Releasing your military's attack plans, or even details of those plans, can tip off your enemy and put your warriors at even greater risk, which is why significant military plans and even details of many plans are protected as secret information. Well, Secretary Hegseth released military plans shortly before the U.S. conducted an attack. In mid-March, let me pull something up for you. So, in mid-March, just a few hours before the Navy fighters launched to strike Houthi targets in Yemen, Hegseth told the specific launch times of the fighters, the specific strike times of the fighters, the drones, and the cruise missiles, and he provided some of the information on the Houthi targets. He provided all of this information on two Signal chats. So Signal is a communications app that anyone can put on his or her phone or computer. Signal is not approved for secret government information. If you look at the right side of the slide, you'll see excerpts from Hegseth's chat. I'll give you a few seconds to look that over. I just want to highlight one huge irony, is Hegseth literally said, "We are currently clean on OPSEC." That means he's saying no one has leaked this information. All right. So one chat group, so I remember I said there were two chat groups Hegseth provided this to. One of those chat groups had many senior cabinet officials and the vice president. This chat came to the public's attention because the cabinet official organizing the chat accidentally brought a reporter into the chat. The reporter waited more than a week after the strikes before revealing that cabinet officials and the vice president had included him in a chat discussion on the Signal app. And in that chat discussion, Hegseth provided the initial strike details into Yemen. Initially, the reporter did not release the full chat. However, when the Trump administration attacked him as a liar, he released the full chat. It's available via many news outlets. The administration does not deny this chat happened. The second chat happened the same day as the first. It was also on Signal. It was amongst Hegseth's friends and family. It included the same details, the same strike details as the first chat. The second chat came to the public's attention a few weeks after the first. 4 people with knowledge of it told the New York Times. The Trump administration does not deny the second chat. The Trump administration is downplaying the significance of both chats, but it is not denying either one. So from the perspective of someone who worked in the world where secrets protected me, and I had a duty to protect secrets, I'll explain why this incident is so dangerous, serious, and relevant by posing and then answering a series of questions. The first question, why is this incident so dangerous and serious? I'll start by looking at it from the perspective of Yemen. In Yemen, Hegseth provide In Yemen, Hegseth put the pilots at risk and the success of the strikes at risk. He released enough details that had the Houthis got the details, they could have shot down the planes or moved the targets. Now, zooming out from the bigger picture, Hegseth, the cabinet officials, and the vice president created vulnerabilities that spies can exploit. So, next question. How did Hegseth, the cabinet members and vice president, put pilots at risk and create vulnerabilities spies can exploit? The short answer is they communicated secret information on devices and via unsecure chats that spies can penetrate. So I'll elaborate on that answer a little bit. They communicated secret information on the Signal chat app, which is not approved for secret information. Regardless of the Trump administration hiding behind Signal's advertising of robust security, Signal is not approved for secret government information. They communicated secret information to non-government officials. I can say with certainty the reporter is not a government official, and I doubt Hegseth's wife is either. They communicated secret information on devices not approved for secret communications. I can say with certainty the reporter was on a personal phone. He's not a government official, so he does not warrant a government phone. The cabinet members and vice president would have had access to government phones, but they could have been on personal phones. Regardless of who was on a government or personal phone, I can say with certainty no one was on a phone approved for secret information or using his or her phone in secret mode. Because if a government phone can communicate with a personal phone, i.e., the reporters, then the government phone is not secret or it's not in secret mode. The big takeaway is secret devices can only communicate with other secret devices. Had the cabinet officials used secret devices, it would have been impossible to accidentally invite a reporter. So the next question, why is this still relevant? The strikes into Yemen succeeded, so this is no big deal, right? That's flat out wrong. That's one of the lies the Trump administration is hiding behind. America lucked into learning about the two Yemen signal chats. Therefore, America lucked into learning the Trump administration is ignoring the security measures that protect secret information. If not for accidentally bringing the reporter into the cabinet officials' chat discussion, America would not know this incident happened. The reporter did the responsible thing by waiting a week after the strikes and then revealing he'd been invited to a signal chat where Hegseth provided the initial strike details into Yemen. Spies will not reveal they have access to cabinet officials' devices or chats. Spies protect their sources to keep using them, potentially for years. Spies work on a much longer timeline than America's attention span or news cycle, which is why Signalgate is relevant and dangerous and will remain so until Trump or Congress solve it. Remember early on I said this is solvable? Trump or Congress can and must solve this by firing Hegseth. It's that simple. This will demonstrate accountability by getting rid of the cabinet member who most blatantly ignored the security protocols by sharing the strike details. And then Trump or Congress must take actions to find any previous compromises and prevent future compromises. So just because the mission succeeded does not mean there was no compromise. The compromise could have been by Russia or China or North Korea, and it's not worth it to these countries to shoot down American planes or warn the Houthis so the Houthis can shoot down American planes if doing so might reveal they've penetrated the devices or chats of senior U.S. officials or people close to senior U.S. officials. Russia, China, and North Korea want to keep exploiting the devices they've penetrated. And here's a national security tip for the Trump administration. Russia, China, and North Korea are exploiting these devices with the purpose of crippling or destroying America. So what we don't know makes this a dangerous and serious and still very relevant incident. Examples of what we don't know are: what else have the cabinet officials and vice president discussed via unsecure methods and on unsecure devices? In other words, what secret chats or discussions have happened or are happening in unsecure ways without a responsible reporter accidentally invited? How widespread is the problem? In other words, how widespread is the use of unsecure methods or unsecure devices amongst the officials below the cabinet officials and vice president? Trump didn't fire Hegseth. Trump praises Hegseth. And most Republicans in Congress are preventing Congress from taking action. So why should low-level administration officials follow security protocols? What other security protocols are the cabinet officials, vice president, and their subordinates ignoring? I thought these examples would hammer home the danger and seriousness of the incident. But in coming up with these examples, I identified a trend that led to more revealing and ethical questions. Questions that Trump and his supporters in Congress must answer since they are unwilling to hold the cabinet officials, Hegseth specifically, accountable. So the first revealing and ethical question: why do the rules, in this case, why do the security protocols that protect America's warriors and national security not apply to Hegseth, the other cabinet officials, and the vice president? What is the administration's incentive to follow security protocols? There's been no accountability from Trump. Trump says this is not a big deal. And there's been no accountability from Congress due to opposition from most Republicans. What tragedy must happen for the Trump administration to follow security protocols? Did the fighters need to be shot down over Yemen? Uh, do Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 need to be ambushed when conducting a hostage rescue? In a war against China or Russia, do our nuclear submarines need to be sunk in the first day? The U.S. protects secrets to give it an advantage in war. The U.S. has security protocols and special communications equipment to protect secrets. Hegseth was the most blatant violator, so Trump should have fired Hegseth, but he didn't. Every member of Congress, regardless of party, should have demanded Trump fire Hegseth, but they didn't. Most Republicans in Congress didn't because that would have been an acknowledgement that they and Trump were wrong about Hegseth. And if they were wrong about Hegseth, what other cabinet members were they wrong about? Therefore, Trump and most Republicans in Congress protected Trump's brand instead of protecting America's warriors and national security. In May, when I gave this talk to a veterans group, I ended here. Well, several months have passed, and in those several months, Trump and his administration have done many things to show their commitment to promoting Trump's brand at the expense of national security. The obvious thing Trump has done is deploy the military into American cities after fabricating crises. This is dangerous because it erodes America's trust in the military by pitting the military against the populace. However, to show how sinister Trump is, I will highlight some less obvious incidents that caught my attention. Those incidents are his speech at Fort Bragg, his speech following the Army birthday parade, his insistence that the U.S. obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, and his handling of the strikes on the Venezuelan drug boats. The two speeches promote Trump's brand at the expense of national security by demonstrating the perception or reality that the military is loyal to Trump. This is dangerous to national security because it moves the military closer to being a loyalist military rather than a professional military. In his Fort Bragg speech, Trump was not subtle. He denounced Democrats, specifically the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles, in front of an audience of soldiers. His speech after the Army birthday parade was subtle. Most people probably did not notice that he only specifically acknowledged the Army's infantrymen, Rangers, paratroopers, and special forces. I should be flattered because I am all four of those things, but I am not flattered. Unlike Trump, I appreciate all soldiers. The infantry, Rangers, paratroopers, and special forces are a fraction of the Army, and they need the rest of the Army so they can efficiently do their jobs. But the infantry, Rangers, paratroopers, and special forces are the Army's killers. And Trump wants to win them over or relate to them to increase the reality or perception that they are loyal to him. Both speeches show Trump wants a loyalist military over a professional military. This is dangerous because a loyalist military can more easily be employed domestically, which is happening. This is also dangerous because a loyalist military is a hollow military that's not prepared to handle national security crises. An easy distinction between the two is a loyalist military does not give its leadership bad news, whereas a professional military gives honest assessments of its capabilities, which sometimes means giving its leaders bad news. Professional militaries do this so leaders can make decisions based on real capabilities. Here's an example. If a military has 1,000 tanks but only 500 work, the loyalist military tells its leadership they have 1,000 tanks and makes a plan based on 1,000 tanks. In battle, soldiers die because they fought with half the forces the plan called for. Contrast that with a professional military that constantly tells its leadership, half our tanks are broken. This is what we're doing to fix them, and this is what you, the leadership, can do to help. Additionally, a professional military makes a plan based on 500 tanks, so at least the soldiers go into battle with a plan based in reality. So now for the tie-in to the strikes on Iran. It was pathetic and dangerous how eager Trump was to claim total obliteration of Iran's nuclear capabilities. He did so to promote the strength of his brand, but he is promoting his brand at the expense of national security by showing how ripe he is for manipulation, by potentially outing an intelligence source, by limiting America's options for deception, and by politicizing America's intelligence services. Crazily, our great deal-making president revealed to Iran they can manipulate him by claiming total obliteration of their nuclear capabilities. Of course, this brings some risk for the Iranian regime, but if Iran claims total obliteration, Iran can deceive Trump into no longer watching their nuclear program as they rebuild it. Similarly, our great deal-making president revealed how Israel can manipulate him. Trump will be desperate to keep any Israeli intelligence assessment that does not confirm total obliteration of Iran's nuclear capabilities from coming to light. Israel can use this to blackmail Trump into doing their bidding. With the type of strikes the U.S. conducted, uncertainty of their effect for a while makes sense. The facilities are deep underground, so it's reasonable that satellites or sensors cannot detect the level of damage. So does Trump's knowledge of total obliteration come from a spy? Most likely, very few Iranians know the level of damage to their nuclear capabilities. Trump's insistence of total obliteration could prompt the Iranians to scrutinize this very small pool. So Trump could be outing a spy deep in the Iranian nuclear program. Or does the United States have a satellite or sensor that no other nation has, one that can see deep underground? If we do, but we do not want other nations to know, why is Trump blabbering his certainty of obliteration? So getting back to something I said a minute ago, with the type of strikes the U.S. conducted, uncertainty of their effect for a while makes sense. And there's opportunity in that uncertainty. There are advantages to pretending we know more than we do. There are also advantages to pretending we know less than we do. Therefore, the intelligence assessment leaked to the public shortly after the strikes could have and should have been deception. But Trump's blabbering his certainty of total obliteration removed many options to deceive Iran, because everyone knows Trump is too vain to let the deception operation make him look bad. In fact, Trump is using the leaked intelligence assessment to discredit our intelligence services because they will not parrot his blabbering about total obliteration, which ties into how the strikes on Iran politicize America's intelligence services. Trump's blabbering about total obliteration was premature and conflicted with the U.S. intelligence assessment. This conflict, though, gives Trump the opportunity to discredit U.S. intelligence services, which will drive quality people out of the intelligence services. Some people will leave on their own because their hard, unbiased work is being ignored and even vilified. Other people have been fired for not telling Trump what he wants to hear or being deemed not loyal enough. On August 22nd, Trump fired the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz. The Defense Intelligence Agency's assessment said the strikes on Iran only delayed Iran's nuclear capabilities by a few months. Even before the strikes on Iran, Trump fired General Tim Hawk, the head of the National Security Agency. And according to Fox News, because of, now I'm quoting Fox, because of, quote, mounting pressure from conservative allies to purge officials they view as insufficiently loyal to the president's America First agenda, end quote. It's worth noting the Senate unanimously confirmed General Hawk to lead the National Security Agency in December of 2023. Eventually, Trump will replace unbiased intelligence professionals with very biased loyalists whose primary role is to tell Trump what he and his followers want to hear. Trump's blabbering created problems and limited America's options after the strikes on Iran. Now his blabbering about destroying the Venezuelan drug boats starting in early September is limiting America's options to fight drug cartels, which makes me doubt that the destruction of the Venezuelan boats is really to protect America from Venezuelan drug runners. Assuming the administration did everything correct legally and properly coordinated with Congress, assuming the administration is not desensitizing America to killing people without a trial. So, assuming the administration did everything right and with the best of intentions, if Trump had kept his mouth shut and not boasted about the destruction of the Venezuelan boats, America could lure more drug runners to their deaths. I'm a fan of killing drug runners, and it's easier to kill them when they do not know who is doing it. This can even prompt an internal conflict where they kill each other. That Trump did not keep his mouth shut shows me that he and his administration are amateurs, or these are propaganda stunts using the U.S. military rather than a concerted effort by a rational administration to use deadly force to deter drug runners. In short, the destruction of the boats just promoted Trump's brand. At the start, I promised I'd show where this could lead. I'll do that by one, giving my insights into what Hegseth said to the senior military leaders at Quantico, Virginia on September 30th, and by two, giving a real-world example of what the U.S. military and intelligence services could become under Trump. Trump's outrageous comments at Quantico have been well covered by the media. Hegseth's comments were veiled and much more dangerous. Hegseth talked about the warrior spirit and fitness. Militaries across the ages have wrestled with how to instill the warrior spirit and improve fitness. So his comments seemed reasonable. But then it hit me. The Trump administration is not reasonable. So Hegseth is talking about reasonable military topics, but for nefarious purposes. Hegseth is harping on the warrior spirit because the Trump administration wants to short circuit the military's institutions that create that create professional warriors loyal to the Constitution. Trump wants a force loyal to him that he can turn loose on Americans. This fits with Trump establishing that he can define threats to America. Trump demonizing Democrats and describing Democrat-run cities as crime-ridden hellscapes is whipping up his followers into thinking only the military in American cities can save America. And Hegseth's reasonable talk about the warrior spirit moves Trump closer to getting his loyalist force. The comments will not incur the ire of the American public, and they give Republicans in Congress an excuse not to scrutinize the administration's politicization of the military. Because anyone opposing Hegseth's warrior spirit comments can easily be labeled an unpatriotic wuss who does not understand what's needed to make real warriors. Hegseth's focus on fitness is simple. He is desensitizing America to the use of fitness and military appearance to oust military leaders as part of a purge. Fitness and military appearance are now tools in the administration's purge toolkit. Since military appearance is often tied to fitness but is subjective, the administration can get rid of military leaders it does not like by claiming they do not have a good military appearance. DEI, or I should actually say anti-DEI, is a tool the administration has already used to fire senior military leaders they perceive as not loyal to Trump. Polygraphs are a tool being considered. Under the guise of testing loyalty to America, the administration will use polygraphs to test loyalty to Trump, and any failures will give the administration an excuse to get rid of some military leaders. The diabolical genius of using these tools to purge the military is that they give the purge an air of legality, which means the American public is less likely to question the purge, and Republicans in Congress have an excuse not to stop it. Now, for the real world example of the military and intelligence service Trump will downgrade us to if Republicans in Congress do not stop him. When the military and intelligence services value loyalty to a brand or man rather than professional competence, you get the Russian military bogged down in Ukraine. In the lead up to the invasion, Putin thought the Russian military was capable. But how capable is a military that does not assess itself honestly because no one throughout the organization tells his boss bad news? In the lead up to the invasion, Russian intelligence said Ukraine could be overrun in weeks or months. But how credible are intelligence reports if the goal is to tell Putin what he wants to hear, which is that Ukraine is weak? Of course, European and American aid has helped Ukraine immensely, but Russia blew it in the first few weeks before that aid could arrive. This happened because Russia grossly overestimated its capabilities and way underestimated Ukraine's. This happened because Putin demanded and got loyalty to him and his brand rather than a professional and competent military and intelligence service. Appallingly, Trump wants this same type of loyalty to his brand from America's military and intelligence services. And depressingly, few Republicans in Congress are opposing him. So, what can you do? I'll start with an intangible, but don't worry, I'll end with something tangible. Here's the intangible. Understand how the administration's actions or rhetoric in one arena are related to or contradict its actions or rhetoric in another arena. Then use that understanding to influence people. My talk is in the national security arena, but you can make connections between what I talked about and other arenas. I talked about deception, the importance of the U.S. being able to deceive its enemies, and how Trump is limiting our options to deceive Iran. Here are some connections between deception and domestic issues. When is deception acceptable? Against a foreign enemy? Against a political enemy? Against the people whose votes Trump wants? Is Trump deceiving Americans? Are Americans Trump's enemy? Here's a specific example. Candidate Trump claimed the Epstein files could expose a vast Democrat conspiracy. So was this deception? Now, President Trump will not release the Epstein files to prove this vast Democrat conspiracy. So is this the deception? Even Trump's request to unseal grand jury material related to Epstein was deception. Judge Engelmeyer, the federal judge who denied the request, stated as much in his official decision. Let me pull that up for you. So Judge Engelmeyer's decision states a member of the public appreciating that the Maxwell grand jury materials do not contribute anything to public knowledge might conclude that the government's motion for their unsealing was aimed not at transparency, but at diversion, aimed not at full disclosure, but at the illusion of such. Here's a connection to the immigration arena. I talked about government secrets. I gave you the definition of secret. Signalgate was in mid-March, and Trump said the strike details Hegseth released on the two signal chats were not secret. In May, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, used language very similar to the definition of secret. Rubio claimed to a federal judge that releasing the government's efforts on Obrego Garcia, so he's the Maryland man who was incorrectly deported to El Salvador. So Rubio claimed that releasing the government's efforts on Obrego Garcia would cause significant harm to national security. Rubio's declaration stated, and I'll pull that up for you. So this is Marco Rubio's official declaration. Compelled disclosure of any sensitive communications or discussions with the government of El Salvador regarding Abrego Garcia's removal and confinement in CICOT and Centro Industrial threatens significant harm to the United States foreign affairs and national security interests. So here's a side by side of Rubio's declaration and the definition of secret. So you can see their similarities for yourselves. I'll give you a little bit to compare the two. All right. So this shows me the Trump administration knows the definition of secret, which means the Trump administration does not care about protecting Navy pilots flying combat missions into Yemen, but it needs to protect itself by not releasing how it deported Obrego Garcia. In other words, to Trump and his administration, losing Navy pilots over Yemen is not severe or significant damage to national security. But the administration's handling of Obrego Garcia's incorrect deportation is. As a patriot, as a veteran, as someone who did hard, dangerous work for America, I find this appalling. It's beyond hypocrisy. I could go on, but I'll stop here. I ask you to make these types of connections and inform others, which merges into the tangible thing you can do. Find ways to speak out. Find ways to influence people. Contact your politicians at all levels. If anything, I hope my talk has given you the confidence to call out the representatives and senators who are protecting and promoting Trump's brand at the expense of national security. Needle them with Hegseth's national security blunder just hours before the strikes into Yemen. Remind them of Trump's refusal to fire Hegseth for this blunder. Shame them for not forcing Trump to fire Hegseth for this blunder. Most of all, shame the representatives and senators supporting Trump for their hypocrisy. They love to wave the flag and thank the military and talk about the military's bravery and selfless service. But when America needs everyone in Congress to be brave and selfless, when America needs everyone in Congress to protect the military and intelligence services from Trump's tyranny and incompetence, Trump's supporters in Congress fail miserably because their loyalty is to Trump's brand, not America. And that should be unacceptable to every American patriot. This concludes my talk. Thank you for watching.